Employers of Reddit, why is that employee that's always late still around? For us, he's a dang good worker other than being a few minutes late. He's always upbeat, brings a great attitude to work, does his job without complaint, and is very knowledgeable. Just sucks when he's scheduled to open at 7:45. We can pretty much assume he won't be in until 8. I can tell about one guy we had in the military that I wondered at the beginning why no one cared when he always came late. He worked on the ship since 12 years and knew basically everything about it. He also always knew when something was to do and had free reign. He also never got work assigned. Instead he would just walk around and after 10 minutes someone would come to him with a problem they could not solve themselves. He'd also work until something was fixed when it was broken. He didn't really care how much overtime it took in that regard. That's pretty much the best employee a company can have. I asked my old boss about this. We had a guy when I was a porter who would come in at least 30 minutes late and always tried to leave early. He said the guy did really good work while he was there. Freaking bulls. I did good work, got paid the same rate. Eventually I was put in charge of a project and had this guy reporting to me. First day he was 2 hours late. I told him he needs to buy an alarm and get here on time. Just go home, everyone is already working on something. We were building a volleyball court. Next day only 30 minutes late. Fine, whatever. Teams of 3 were shoveling sand from a pile a dump truck made, putting it in 5-gallon buckets, and carrying it down. He was a team of 1. Some freaking how he carried down just under what the teams of 3 did. Boss was right. This guy hauls but once he arrives. I like the ending. Yeah, it's crappy that he shows up late, but finding out he is a good worker and hauled butt was a nice surprise. He was the best and most adult employee I had. If we were busy he'd cut his lunch short. If the UPS pickup was late he'd stay to make sure everything got on the road. Worked hard to keep my business successful. More than made up for the 15 minutes he was eternally late. Hope he got a raise. When I worked in retail management it was because we couldn't keep up with the turnover. It's easier to be understaffed for 15 minutes with a seasoned kid than it is to train a new punctual one. A common reason I hear from management is bad breath is better than no breath. In huge companies, they're often on hiring freezes for shoots and giggles in random departments, so there is real risk that if you did put the person on notice, did all the warnings and whatnot, and finally got rid of them, you wouldn't get a backfill, so the work they were doing when coming in late would have to shift to everyone else. We kinda had this issue on our team and we never reported him to management for the same reason. The stuff the guy willingly worked on was all work none of us wanted to do. He showed up at 10 and was out by 3:30 every day, but we didn't care because he got his crap done and we didn't have to do it. I used to work at a cinema and we had a guy on the rota, doing the minimum 4 hours a week. Barely saw him though even when he was meant to be working with me. Was months before I ran into him. I finally met him and he was some old guy, really old guy, whereas the rest of the staff were less than 30. He could barely do anything and would just wander off from his post and nobody batted an eyelid, and I understood why. He was so old and had worked there for like 40 years or something crazy, so they just kept him on staff as it would be horrible to fire him, and just rotated people in to cover his workload. Bless him. Work my butt. You got no idea what it took in the old days to get the flickers going and keep them going. Not the employer myself, but my husband is a serial sleeper in and still managed to keep his job simply because nobody there gives a crap about it as long as you do your dang job. I once worked for an accounting firm and my co-worker was fired in the second week of January and my boss asked me to cover her job and still do mine until we find someone to help. So, the middle of tax season is booming and I'm working the extra job and my job, helping conduct interviews and training a new person. Twice, because boss picked a lame duck. I'm not a morning person, so I was getting to the office by 9 AM, but working until at least 10 PM. Every day Saturdays and Sundays. 2. My boss worked 8 AM to 5 PM and kept getting upset. Passive-aggressive upset with me that I wasn't coming in when she was, until I pointed out that she could check my timesheets to see if I was really slacking. She quit complaining after realizing I had been working 13-hour days for 4 weeks straight. Accountant here, that is when your boss either becomes the nicest person in the world to you or you leverage a huge raise, both annual salary and additional for extra duties until replacement is hired. You can get hired by another firm in a second in January March if you know your stuff. Even more so if you don't have a non-compete and can solicit customers. I can track hours worked to income generated. It's a pretty easy thing to do. That guy who shows up 25 minutes late every day generates more in the first 5 hours of his day than anyone else does in their entire day. Money talks, bulls walks. If you have a late co-worker and think to yourself they would never let me get away with that, take a minute to consider what that really means about your employer's opinion of your output. My boss schedules himself to open every morning at 7:30. He doesn't show up until 8:15 to 8:30 every day. He actually texted me at 7:45 this morning just now telling me he was taking a vacation day. Why is he still around? I can't fire him. If that person is in sales, it's because they sell a lot. Top salespeople can crap on the floor on the way out too, and still have a job the next day. Accurate. There's a salesperson I know that could do a line of blow off a H-bus in the middle of the showroom on a busy Saturday and no one would say crap to him. I think this question can be divided between those who work retail or shifts and those in professions where the given hours are more of a guideline and no one cares as long as the work gets done, and done well. In retail, sometimes just having bodies present helps, even if they're incompetent. It's about efficiency. Some people are real freaking good at their job. Big misconception is the guy working late is always the hardest worker. People who have no life want to hang it over your head so they can be better than you at something. Look at what a diligent worker I am. I came in early and worked through lunch. Sure dude, you win the award no one wanted. Supreme corporate slave. He lives across town through no fault of his own. His commute is hellacious. He's never more than 10 minutes late. He stays 30 minutes or more after quitting time every day. His work quality is truly a marvel, and his scientific acumen for experiment design is peerless. I'll take him over your pert punctuality any day of the week. Vicky, now get the frick back to work instead of playing on your god's damned phone. D. Geez Vicky, told you not to complain. Because it's winter in Michigan, the roads will either be fine or a complete icy mess and I'd rather they get here late than not at all. Colorado IT here. VPN tickets rise on days like this, haha. He does a ton of work. Can be seen in the building sometimes at midnight. He lives across the street, just can't make it until 9:05. I worked at a company AOL bought in the early 90s. There was a guy who was obviously respected a lot but also came in around 10 and usually was dressed in board shorts and flip-flops. I asked someone one day what he's doing there. They said vesting. Ah, the good old rest and vest. I employ 50 people in my business, and 2 of them are always up to 30 minutes late. I've thought about firing them, but they're both single parents with children, and it just so happens that the school and travel times makes them up to 30 minutes late, depending on traffic. I could make their start times later, but then I'd feel like a shitbag for depriving them of some of their pay just because they're being responsible parents, getting their kids to school, and upholding full-time jobs. I just turn a blind eye to it. As long as they do good work, which they do, it's all golden. I really appreciate this. Sometimes the bus is late or our schedule is so tight that traffic can make us late. Thank you for being reasonable and respectful. I bet you're a pleasure to work for. My partner is an accountant and no one at his office is right on the dot on time. A few minutes leeway for them BC, a lot of them commute far. I get what you're saying when it comes to life-saving jobs though. In accounting it's all billable hours. Anyway, the clients don't know if you billed them an hour at 7 AM or 10 AM. Plus, tax session means everyone works crazy hours, no matter what time they begin. For many jobs, you don't need to be at the office or on site at the start of work. I work in a sales office, and basically nobody comes in at 9. You're measured on your performance, not freaking attendance. Not late, but took a lot of long bathroom breaks. We had a new guy join. It was the end of his 30-day job review from the job center and he was hired on. During the 30 days, and the first month, he worked rather well. Wasn't exactly late, did his work well, etc. Now, after the first month of full time, he started going to the bathroom a lot. We work a 12-hour shift. It's understandable, though we have breaks every 2 hours. This guy wasn't taking 5-10 minute breaks. He was there for 20-40 minutes sitting on his dang phone. He'd text the team lead saying, "Hey, look at this LOL" or something. He'd walk out and go back to his machine. After that, he'd sit on his phone, on the machine. He just goes on social media. That's it. When the team lead is around, he asks for help on the same part he was working on 3 hours ago. Very rarely he'd do work. It got to the point where team lead told the boss about it and suggested to document it. All the people on floor would wait by his machine when he's gone, waiting for him to come back. 30 minutes later he will come out the bathroom and say, "The frick you guys doing? On average he spent 3 hours in the bathroom a day." We can't fire him. He's required 90 days on the job. I'm the employee. Literally no one knows the exact scale of my job. I am the only person that knows all the things I do and how to do them, and my employer knows it. Same boat. I'm also the token millennial in the company, so being available to provide tech support, send out mail merges and automate tasks that would take others hours means I have a lot of spare time on my hands, and no one complains. Except that one guy who spends half his day trying to work out how to log into Skype. Guy in my office, not here anymore. Since 2011 to 2017 he had about 250 lates on his record. This is just what was recorded. Wasn't the best at what he done. Assistant manager's ex-husband was his best friend, so you can see why he didn't leave. No one said anything to the higher ups, as we know nothing would get done. It did open the door for a few of us to come in late every once in a while, and if they ever said anything, we would just quote his late record and just say we will be on time next time. We never got written up, but still. He was a crap employee but sound guy outside of work. Completely different person. Sadly he took his life after Christmas. Usually because they make up for the lost time and the time they are there. Had a guy like that as a co-worker in a former job. Lived literally across the street from work. Was 5-10 minutes late every day. We used to joke he could hear the buzzer that went off to tell the rest of us it was the start of the workday, and that was his alarm clock. He'd then get there and smoke most of the crew in overall productivity, which was easy to measure. Warehouse order picking job, work order assignment heavily computerized, and stats printed out and posted on a notice board in the break room to shame the lazy. Only 2 people sometimes beat his numbers. I was one. I'd done the same work in a much higher pressure place before, and had one edge. I'd mastered the skill of talking to a co-worker and working at the same time, which, to the people there, was some kind of witchcraft they'd never seen, at least for my first 6 months, but we needed the 10-minute head start to do that. Because being late isn't always a big deal in every job. If what time you show up doesn't have any bearing on the company's operations, or on the customer's impression of your company, then why should it matter? I'm one of those people. I know I need to fix it, but the only person who cares is the hourly person who works as our greeter. The owners don't care because I'm never more than a few minutes late. I'm salaried. I'm almost always putting in my good 40 hours if not more than that, and I'm one of the best assets in the company. Like, STFU Beverly. I'm salaried and I'm responsible for 75% of the profit that came in last month. Stop complaining. I'm the reason you get a paycheck. Work in software. We tend to stay late, so coming in late isn't an issue. Also, our productivity is only loosely coupled with time in the office anyway. Get a rubber duck. I would clarify that they leave early as well. I have 3 kids, all at different schools, and my wife works as well. Her hours are less flexible than mine, so I get into the office between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. Trying to get the kids all out the door, while most of my co-workers are here before 8 o'clock, but I leave well after them. They leave about 4:30 while I'm usually here until 6 o'clock, but people only see when you get to work after them, not how much later you stay. I'd be more worried if I had a petty clock watcher than someone who comes in late, as long as the work gets done. I don't care what schedule they work. I would fire a tattletale from my group first. I was told that you only need 2 out of 3 of these qualities to keep your job. 1. Have a good attitude personality. 2. Work hard. 3. Be on time. There are very few people in this world with all three. Only on time to meetings. I hate mornings. Happy to work till the wee hours, because I'm gonna be up till 2 AM anyway. The morning comes early though. Guy started at my work on Monday 15 minutes late, on his first freaking day. Tuesday 1 hour 20 minutes late, said his alarm didn't go off. Wednesday 30 minutes late. Thursday, calls in sick saying he's in accident and emergency with no explanation of why. I get the feeling he might not be here tomorrow either. Update me on this PLS. Unfortunately I am the late employee. It seems extremely obvious to me why I am kept, however. I'm given some slack because I attend uni full time as well as work 30 hours a week. Also I am one of 3 employees that is competent at every station, can handle my own when everyone else is on break, and commonly work 11 shifts with either only one 30 minutes break or none depending how busy it is. To be added, I work as a cook despite going to uni for a completely different field. Unfortunately for the restaurant I am one of the best they got and it's not worth losing me over being late. Even caught stealing food out of hunger on long shifts and just told to keep it cheap instead of eating salmon or steak. I am that guy. I live less than 10 minutes from the office. Been working here for close to 5 years. Being in IT, I have access to everything at all times from anywhere. I inherited a few different roles over the years that basically molded me into the general knowledge guy for pretty much every department, and I manage support some of the key business apps and servers. People like me here and my boss is never in before 9, so number 1 notices I'm ever late anyways. It's only like 5-10 minutes at most, but it's pretty regular. 1. Firing someone, at least in my profession, is a long, drawn out, painful, boring process that has to include HR and documenting freaking everything. Seriously, it takes a lot of work to fire someone. For a busy supervisor or manager, unless this person is actively sabotaging the company or their work, or somehow harming clients, going through the firing process is a low priority, especially if it's something relatively minor like being late. 2. Once you actually do fire someone, you now have to deal with a vacancy on the team. This sucks hard. You have to get others to cover. Others who are already overworked and stressed and spread real thin. They don't get extra pay for the extra work they do, and now you risk other good staff who you want to keep around, unlike the one you fired, getting burned out and quitting. I'd rather keep someone who is late than lose some of my best staff. 3. Hiring is a freaking chore. At my company, HR screens resumes then forwards me the candidates that meet minimum requirements. Then I do the rest. I have to review resumes, send out screening questions, coordinate with co-workers and schedule interviews. We'll have a co-worker interview with us. HR doesn't like us interviewing candidates alone, so finding a time that works for me, a co-worker, and the candidate sometimes delays the process. If we move forward with a candidate, it takes 3-6 weeks for background and reference checks, then a week of orientation. At an absolute minimum, you're taking 2 months before getting a new hire on board, and that's if everything goes perfectly, which it never does. Candidates drop out at the last minute, or no promising candidates come in at all. I've had several interview sessions where we couldn't go with anyone because they were all unqualified. Then it's back to square one. 4. After you've finally hired someone, you have to train them, introduce them to everyone, make sure they have all their equipment, schedule their first few weeks for them, etc. Onboarding is a freaking ton of work. Again, I'd rather keep someone who is not perfect than go through this entire process. TLDR. The amount of time that is spent on hiring is ridiculous, and during that time the team suffers while having to pick up the slack of the vacant position. Oftentimes it's not worth it to fire someone for something as minor as being late. When I was teaching at a nursing school, that one employee who was always causing problems was the department head's niece. Every time she screwed something up, which was about twice a day, she would immediately disappear. Head to her aunt and blame it on you, and you will get brought into the office and put on notice or fired. HR refused to listen to anyone else's complaints about it until it got so bad that every other employee in the department, besides the head and her niece, resigned in the middle of the semester, forcing the college to cancel the semester, pushing it to the semester summer. The department head retired and her niece was not retained, and the HR person in charge of the department was also let go. Too little too late though. I'm just his supervisor, not the employer, but it's simple, because he gets more done in the 7 hours and 30 minutes he is here than the others do in the 8. Never even a question. His crap will be done, and he will probably end up doing crap that was left undone from previous shifts. 30 minutes late seems a small price to pay for that. There is this temp we hire that I call 904. She always comes in at the time. I swear she accidentally does amazing work. IDK what the frick or how the frick she does it, but 904 is doing some good crap. Because my manager has never fired anyone ever for any reason, and isn't about to grow a pair and start firing them now. He would rather just reduce their scheduled hours until the person just gives up and finds a new job than have an adult conversation with them and tell them they're fired for always being late or never showing up or disrespecting their co-workers. As a guy that is often late to work, my words to all of you are, mind your own business. If my work is getting done, and the boss has no complaints, then why are you worrying so much about what I am doing? Do I make a fuss when you take that extra 15 minutes for lunch on Friday? Because we are adults, and we have things we must take care of, and at the end of the day, it's about the work we do, not the time we spend. So just keep your eyes on your own life there, buddy. As a manager, I hate the clock watchers more than the late people. At my last job we had a guy who was consistently late by 15-20 minutes every day without fail. My boss tolerated it because he was the best salesman the company had. He made more money for the company in a year than I did in 2. He left to start his own company, then later went to work for a wholesaler that allowed him to do the same thing. Unfortunately he passed away suddenly after a post-surgery infection. R.I.P. Felix, you were one of the best salesmen I'd ever met, as well as a great friend. A few possible reasons. 1. Oh, has he been late that often? Sometimes we simply don't notice with what else we've got going on. As much of a poor excuse that sets poor expectations as that is, it happens. 2. They've got something personal going on that you're not privy to. We'll try to work with you too if something similar is going on. Till then, politely mind your own business. 3. They haven't been late as often as you think. You just have a weird obsession with noticing and make a big deal about it when they do. 3. We're human too. Conflict like this can be really rough for us as well, especially when it reaches the point of having to fire someone. We can try to avoid it by finding other solutions or just being very thorough methodical about it before pulling the trigger. 4. We don't want any employee to be poor example to the rest, but if their performance in all other areas is stellar, sometimes concessions are made and blind eyes are turned. It can sometimes be tough managing the gray between a high performance culture at work and fostering employees with revered intangibles. 5. Oh, don't you worry, it's happening soon. It's always just 5 or 10 minutes, but she always does her job very well and always shows up. She even always comes in when somebody else calls in. I have far worse employees that are on time every day. Because you get paid to do work and add value. Not every employment environment treats employees like faceless bodies who just get paid to take up space. I personally avoid those workplaces like the plague. Because she tells everyone that time is just a social construct created to make her look like a bad person for showing up late. She thinks as long as she's there eventually, that's all that matters. Even though it's a freaking retail job where you can't just do the work whenever. But the boss thinks she's a freaking angel sent straight from heaven so she'll never lose her job. Despite showing up late every day, never doing her work, being blatantly rude to customers, and accusing everyone else of being out to get her. I hate that bee. I'll reverse this. I am the guy that's always late, not by much. 10-15 minutes, but I am on salary. I do a lot of sales stuff and I do a lot from home after hours, so my boss couldn't care less. If If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.